How's it going, Great Nation? Chris Thomas here. Hope you're having a great day kind of day. And my guest on this installment of Great Nation is Chef Dennis Littley, who is currently a food and travel oriented digital content creator. You can check out his blog, askchefdennis.com, to learn more. Chef Dennis, how are you doing?
I'm doing great today. Thanks for having me on your show, Chris.
I definitely appreciate it. Chef Dennis, you were born in Texas. Did your passion for cooking start there? And really, what sparked your interest in cooking?
Well, I think my passion for cooking started there because my Mexican grandmother used to love to feed me, and she enjoyed feeding me as much as I enjoyed eating, and I think that really is what started the ball rolling. My mother, on the other hand, wasn't a really good cook. She was a nurse and she worked full time, so that kind of also sparked my interest in cooking because I love to eat. So if she was asleep, I didn't want to wake her up. That meant I had to start cooking for myself.
Now, in terms of your upbringing, or are you of mixed heritage, mixed background?
Well, my mother was Mexican Spanish. My grandmother was a squat little Mexican woman, and my grandfather was a tall, blue eyed Spaniard. And my father's side is English Irish. And my parents met in the Army at Fort Gruber in Oklahoma. And that's kind of how they got together. And I was actually born in Louisiana at Fort Polk, but after about 6 months, they moved me right to Texas, and I claimed Texas heritage ever since because I really wasn't in Louisiana very long.
Do you think that your upbringing shaped your palate in any way? The food you were exposed to.
It did. Tex-Mex food is a lot different in terms of Mexican uh, varieties, and it's a little bit. I don't want to say it's on the upscale Mexican, but it's a little more adventurous. Excuse me. It's a little more adventurous, and just some of the ingredients they use. So I was exposed to that, and then later on in life, when I tried different varieties of Mexican, they were not quite up to par. So I think it did shape my palate in those terms. Although I always say I was not a very good Mexican because I can't eat real spicy food. So it's I like to feel my tongue after I get done eating, and in some instances, some of the spices are pretty heavy. Uh, my father, on the other hand, loved spicy food, but came from a background of pretty bland English kind of uh, meats and potatoes and nothing out of the ordinary. So uh, I think what shaped it more than anything was again my just love for eating and for pretty much trying just about anything.
It's interesting you say that. I'm Mexican American myself, and I'm the exact same way with the spicy foods.
It's amazing. My brother could eat more spicy, and he looked more like the English side of the family, and I looked more like the Mexican side of the family. Although looking at me, you wouldn't think it, but I did take more after that side. But yeah, it just was never something I enjoyed. I remember my grandmother making me enchiladas, which at that point were just frying tortillas and filling them with cheese and fresh chopped onion. And for like maybe a 2 or 3 year old eating raw onion, I was pretty happy camper back then. I remember packing those in.
Well, my mom would make chiliquiles, and I'd be like scratching myself.
Yeah.
I just felt all itchy because of the
Wow.
spiciness. Now, if you weren't a chef, which alternative career path do you think you would have enjoyed?
Well, I was a musician for many years. I wrote jingles and played in bands, and I did enjoy that. I just was not, yeah, I wasn't a very good singer. I didn't bring a lot to the table in those terms. And, as a musician, I was just average. Uh, so I would have rather been a musician if I had an opportunity. And it sounds very cliche, but an astronaut, I would have loved to have been in the space program.
Well, in terms of being a musician, do you think that's something that with additional practice you could have reached the level that you wanted to, or what might have been the dynamic that prevented you from reaching where you wanted to be?
I definitely could have gotten better uh, with practice and more dedication to it. I just probably didn't have that passion for it that really drove me to excel in it. I was very much an underachiever at an early age, and food was the only thing that really sparked an interest in me that drove me to learn more and drove me to want to be better and wanted to be really good at it. So I don't know. I think that's just something I connected with on a more of a spiritual level, um, where music was just like a lot of fun and I really enjoyed it, and it was an outlet, a creative outlet. But food is again has been, I think, the soul of who I am.
What are some of your favorite music artists and bands?
Oh, well, I go back to the Beatles. I love them. I loved David Bowie. Bowie was great. I got to see him. Queen, I got to see them. ELO, going back to the old bands. There was just so many of them. There was so much really beautiful music, so many talents. John Lennon, I would have loved to seen how he would have progressed if we not lost him. Buddy Holly, I would have loved to seen where he would have taken us if we had not lost him. Just music in general. I like pretty much all kinds of music. Uh, just enjoy a good, uh, even opera. Just something that speaks to you. I like to have, again, it's gonna move you. Music should move you, just like food should move you. There was an old song called "The Song Remembers When." Trisha Yearwood sang, and it was about listening to music on the radio and how it would take you back to another place and time. Well, food does the same thing. You smell something, you eat something, and you remember the first time you had that, or a special time that you had that.
I do think both music and food should move you, but in the positive way, because there are some movements tied to food you want to avoid.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, yeah, I know.
Are there some common personal qualities in chefs that are successful? What are the ingredients, no pun intended, of being a truly great chef?
Well, I think the first ingredient is that you absolutely have to love what you do. It's like any profession. If you're in it just because you think it's going to gain you notoriety or it's going to make you money, or if someone else thinks you should be that, you're never going to be great at it. You're never going to really blossom into it, because it has to be that burning passion that drives you, that makes it just part of who you are. But that, and maybe an attention to detail uh, is a good thing, because as a chef you need to have an attention to detail. You can't just not see the whole big picture. You can't, it's about sourcing ingredients, it's about preparing ingredients, it's about storing the ingredients, it's about how you're going to deliver them and what medium you're going to cook them in and how you're going to serve them and how the finished product's going to come out. So there's a process, and you have to kind of be able to see that process and move through it without it being tedious, with it's just more of a natural flow.
What are some misconceptions that people might have about professional chefs?
Well, the one I love is whenever you're watching a cooking movie and the chef goes home after a long day at work, and he starts pulling out every ingredient under the sun out of his refrigerator and prepping and cooking and making these intricate little meals for himself after working a full day. Well, let me tell you, I think that's a crock. So at the end of a full day, I'm lucky if I haven't eaten to have a cheese sandwich or some really bad junk food.
In coming across interviews with other chefs, they talk about the stress of being consistently judged. Can you talk about how you approached that feeling of being under the microscope with every single dish prepared?
Well, you're always performing. It's like Wayne Gretzky's father told him he had one bad day, and he says, "You can't have a bad day. You're Wayne Gretzky. They come to see you play." And this was when he was like 9 years old. He told him this. It's the same thing with a chef. You can't have a bad day. people are paying their hard-earned money to come eat something you prepared, to experience something that you prepared, and your biggest judge should always be yourself. It's not so much worrying about how outsiders judge you, although we do very much, but it's got to be that you're passing the you're at the bar that you have set for yourself. You're past surpassing the bar you have set for yourself. And some days that's difficult because we're human, we're people, we have bad days, and sometimes our bad days carry over into our work. And I always tell people, if you see a staff that is unhappy when they're serving, that means the chef is not happy. And if he is not happy, there's a good chance the meal is not going to be what it could be. Because we project into what we cook. We put our love and our joy into what we cook. And again, we're people, and as hard as it is, we have bad days, but you got to try and rise above that and just be consistent and do the best you can.
Uh, Chefs have mentioned, anxiety, depression, things of that
Oh
nature.
yeah.
Do you just feel like the occupation has unique qualities to it that are uh, somewhat conducive to mental health issues?
Oh, most definitely. It's an artistic type of job. You may not think of it that way, but it is, as a painter or a writer or a sculptor, and people that really excel at that tend to live on the edge a little bit. And the same thing goes with cooking. If you're really talented, there's a lot of times that you're kind of on that edge from time to time. I'm not saying everyone is, because that goes for any profession, but there's a lot of people out there that suffer anxiety because of their performance, and they don't think they're doing as well as they could. Depression, if you have a bad night at the restaurant, if nobody comes in, it's like, all had nights where, like, where's everybody at? Did they go somewhere else to eat tonight? Or you get a bad review in the paper. That's it's easy enough to get caught up into it. And I think the old way of chefs is possibly changing somewhat with the new era of chefs coming in the open kitchens. They breathe some vitality into the industry. But before, chefs were always drinkers, drug users, womanizers. It was just it just almost seemed like it came with the job. I remember my first job. I learned how to curse properly. And then, and then later on, I found out that that really wasn't appropriate. So there was no cursing in my kitchens. And the waitresses sometimes weren't real happy about that. But um, yeah, it's like anything else. You learn bad habits as well as you learn good habits. And sometimes it takes a while for you to unlearn the bad habits, and some people never do, and some people build on the bad habits. But yeah, it's a very stressful, high key job. A lot rides on how you run the restaurant, not just your performance cooking, but how you run the restaurant, because basically the chef runs the restaurant.
How do you think the internet has changed being a chef
uh,
when anyone and everyone has the means of critiquing your work?
it it really has changed a great deal, but I think sometimes more in a positive than a negative. There's always going to be those people that live for negativity, and they live to tear you down and to uh, just make things seem worse than they are, because they had a bad experience, because you didn't pamper them, because you didn't uh, send them free food, and all of a sudden you're a terrible chef and your food is awful. Uh, it's just, I think people on that side of the coin have become more of the problem than the chefs receiving the criticism. It's like they feeling more entitled to voice an opinion when they might not really even know what they're talking about. Did you like the dinner? No. Okay, what was wrong with it? It had broccoli in it. I don't like broccoli. Did it say it had broccoli on the menu? Yes, it did. Well, then why didn't you ask them to put something else in? Oh, I can do that. It's like I would have people order things, and I'm going, oh my god, that sounds horrible. But that's what they wanted done, and they didn't like it. Well, guess what? It sounded horrible, but that's what you wanted me to make. I can't magically make it be delicious if you pick bad ingredients. I mean, I can, but then it wouldn't be what you asked for. So it's just, the internet has changed how we act as restaurateurs, and a lot of it in good ways, because it's no longer just word of mouth. And if you use it right, it's free advertising, and it's really good advertising.
Now, Julia Child, Rachel Ray, and a few others became celebrities as a being a female expert in cooking. Why do you think, though, Chef Dennis, that most cooks that gain really significant mainstream attention happen to be men? I mean, I think about Emeril, Gordon Ramsay, thinking of someone who curses a lot,
Yeah.
Guy Fieri, and the
Mm-hmm.
like. Why do you think there might be a gender disparity in who becomes a celebrity chef?
Well, I don't think it's just in who becomes a celebrity chef. I think it's pretty much every industry. There's a gender inequality, uh, even more so possibly in the kitchen, just because of the type of work it's viewed as. Women were the ones that stayed at home and cooked. Men were the professionals. Where the women were probably better cooks than a lot of the so-called professionals were. Um, Julia Child, she was a national treasure. She really was. And she wasn't appreciated. She was just a housewife who cooked. How silly that was. But yeah, it's difficult. It's more difficult. And again, because when a woman is outspoken, when she is strong, she's called not nice names. When a man is outspoken and he is strong, well, he's a powerful master in his kitchen. So it's this gender inequality, that is just not a good thing. And I think you're going to see more and more women come into the field. They are, more and more women are amazing. They've always been good chefs, but they're getting the recognition they deserve. Uh, but a lot of it also comes down to opening a restaurant, getting the money. Are banks as hesitant to lend to a woman who wants to open it? Or we're going back to gender inequality. We're going back to things like, we see it. It's not as commonplace as it was, but it still is. It's just, not a good situation. I was fortunate enough to cook for 600 high school girls as my last official job. And I placed some of them as apprentices into some very fine dining establishments in Philadelphia. And I had to sit them down and have the talk with them. I felt like one of their parents saying, all right, this is what you have to do. Don't wear any perfume. Don't wear any jewelry. Don't wear any tight fitting clothes. Keep everything, as non sexual as possible. And if anything happens, you tell me right away. But, it's terrible. You have to tell young women to be that way. But in the kitchen situation where it's often volatile, it's just crazy sometimes.
When you gave that advice, how was it received?
Oh, very well, very well. The parents loved me. The kids loved me. There was, I felt like more like, I had turned to the woman I worked with one day and goes, "How did we become old enough to be their grandparents and not their parents? When did that happen?" So it was like a grandfatherly advice. But no, they took it well. I just felt a little uncomfortable giving it, but I wasn't sending them out into the wild without preparing them, because I didn't want them to think that it was all roses and happy thoughts. There's going to be a lot of strange things you're going to see in a restaurant. That's just the nature of the beast, and it depends on how well the kitchen is run. Luckily, I sent them to some very good kitchens, so they did not encounter that to any degree. But I wanted them to be prepared. it's like anything else, be prepared for the worst and hope for the best.
Now, you touched on Philly. You spent a significant portion of your life in Philadelphia. How does a chef account for potential regional palates? Does the food have to be prepared a certain way to appeal more in specific areas of the country? And how does a chef gain awareness of that and adjust to it?
Well, the easiest way to gain awareness of it is to go out and eat and see what other places are serving. I mean, some cities just, kind of speak for themselves and how they prepare certain dishes, and but anymore there's more uniformity in the style that's prevalent now. The nouveau, I don't want to call it nouveau, but more of a simplistic, uh, local localized style of cooking where you're using local ingredients, you're using a better quality of meat or local seafood. Uh, I think it's more or less where you live is what is local to you, and sometimes that is what's more prevalent in how you're going to address the menu. Cooking styles, East Coast to West Coast, drastically different, but you can still serve a piece of fish or a piece of meat prepared very simply, seasoned, just delicately seasoned and cooked properly on either coast, and have it be accepted as a really good entree. uh, it's when people start adding more of their own little touches with their local ingredients, or perhaps a sauce, um, that makes it more regional. Like I was up in St. Augustine, and they had the pepper that they have. I forget the name of it now. The datel pepper. Everything had datel on it. Everything had datel on it. So if you're going to work up there, you got to be prepared to have some knowledge of that pepper and how to use it in some of the dishes, because people will expect it. I worked at one restaurant for years, and it was a highly successful restaurant. And I left for about 8 years, and when I came back, they completely changed the menu. And I said, "What did you do?" I said, he goes, "Business is off." I says, "Well, why did you take these off?" I said, "It wasn't broke. Don't fix it. You add to it. You don't necessarily remove these superstars that people have come to know, but you embellish them with new specials. You add creativity to them." So I brought back a bunch of the old things, and all of a sudden business picked up again.
What was your most memorable positive experience as a chef? And what was your most memorable negative experience as a chef?
Oh, I think my most positive experience as a chef was I did a dinner for it was a private dinner. The school I worked at used to auction me off with their
Oh, wow.
well, yeah, it was their fundraiser, their big fundraiser at the end of the year, and they would auction me off, and I would prepare dinner for up to 10, and it was always more than that, at their home. And most of the times they'd give me a laundry list of this is what they wanted, this is what they wanted, and I felt like saying, well, if this is what you want, why don't you just make it yourself? You know, you know, yeah, this was the inner chef channeling. This was the old days where like, no soup for you kind of attitude. Um,
Well, that's a Philly chef right there for you.
I'm telling you. But then, one dinner I said, "What do you want?" He goes, "Oh, that's up to you." I said, "Is there anything you need me to make?" "No, whatever you want to serve is fine." That was the best dinner I ever made. That was just fan. And the people were moaning in their seats, and they loved every bit of it. It was just a phenomenal experience from beginning to end. And I had to drive like 2.5 hours to get to the place to cook it, and then drive 2.5 hours home. But I was happy because everybody I cooked for was happy. Um, one of the most negative experiences I think I had, which wasn't viewed negative by anybody else but me because I just hated the process, was I fed 800 people uh, at a music pier, and I started cooking the food at 10 in the morning and putting it in hot boxes. And this was not my idea; it was my boss's idea. He had decided to cater this, but we didn't have adequate ovens and everything else to cook it. So I started cooking the food at like 10 in the morning, preparing it, putting it into hot boxes, keeping it hot, and we served dinner at 6 o'clock, and we served 800 people. And I think I did it in 26 minutes, which was phenomenal. But I felt horrible serving that food. I felt horrible doing it. And then hearing people coming off, oh, that was really good, that was really good. I'm going, oh, you don't get out much, do you? But serving something like that just made me feel dirty. So that was my worst experience.
Do you feel it might be just a little bit overly critical of your own work, and maybe it was genuinely good for those folks?
Maybe it was, but and again, overly critical. I just to me that was like just oh, prostituting food. It was doing something. Food is meant to be revered and to turn into something. Food is a means to bond and to grow with people and to make friends and to just have a really good time. Now, granted, these people did, and, but I just felt like sometimes we do things simply because we can, and it's like with some of these fads you see, everybody cooking everything under the sun in an Instapot. Well, yes, you can make that in there. Is it a good idea? No, it's not. Um, just because we can do things doesn't mean we should, or you need to look at a way to do it properly rather than just see the dollar signs. And that's kind of always how I viewed things. And it was, we need to make money because you need to make money to survive, but you shouldn't do it at the expense of quality or just professionalism.
For folks that are habitual visitors to, let's say, a McDonald's,
Mm-hmm.
and they just love it. They're all about McDonald's, and maybe they have friends and they connect there. What do you make of those folks that just love fast food dining and get a positive experience from it?
Yeah, every not everything is for everybody. I enjoy McDonald's cheeseburger every now and then. I'm not going to lie. I grew up on them. It's all about where your palate is at the moment. Like I said, a good give me some Martin potato rolls and some American cheese, and I'm a happy camper. You know, that or even I even make an occasional blue box of macaroni and cheese and eat it out of the pot. And my wife thinks I'm just insane, but there's a time and place for everything. And I'm never going to sit here and say, "Oh, McDonald's is evil." You shouldn't. It's the food of Satan. You should not eat that garbage. It's it is what it is. You go in there? You don't go in there expecting filet mignon. It's like if someone went into Taco Bell and was surprised that the taco wasn't all beef. It wasn't 100% beef. I'm like, really? It was 49 cents, and you thought that was all ground beef? It's textured vegetable protein, which there's nothing wrong with that. There's so many different ways to eat to fill your stomach, and there's ways to eat to fill your soul. So there's a difference. But if all you have I think you're selling yourself short if all you have time for is fast food. I think you're missing a part of life that you could really, really enjoy. But if that's what you need to do, then that's what you need to do. I'm never going to condemn anyone for living their lives the way they want to.
What led to your decision to transition into being a blogger talking about travel and food?
Well, the last job I had was at the school where I fed 600 high school girls, and I was there for 8 years. And after 4 years, I got tired of hiring temps to help work for our special events or whenever we had functions. And I decided to start training my own staff. And I figured to do that, I always liked teaching classes. So I figured, let me start a regular culinary program. I will design it over the summer. I worked on how I was going to do it, presented it to the company I worked for, and said, this is what I want to do. And they agreed, to cover the costs of the products we would use in the class. went to the school, and I said, "This is what I want to do." And they says, "Oh, you." They loved me at that point because I was the girls were happier than they'd ever been with food, and started teaching the culinary class. And when I started the class, I decided there was this new thing called blogging. This was in 2009, and it was just really coming into itself. And I went to the IT department and they helped me set up a blog because I wanted a place for the girls to go to find recipes. If they could ask me questions, off hours, and we could connect on there. And none of them would have that. They just wanted to come into the office and talk to me directly. But sooner or later, some of the other students started going to it. Teachers started going to it. One morning, I woke up and I had a reader in Singapore and a reader in New Zealand, and I had officially become a blogger that day, and just started working it. And those were the days that I could subsist on about 5 hours or 6 hours of sleep a night if I could get that. And I would work on my blog and I would go to work and I would run the culinary class and I would just keep everything moving. And then, as most chefs happen, their bodies start to break down. My back went. I needed another carpal tunnel surgery, a third one on my right hand. I tore a rotator cuff and it was time to retire. My body was just kind of tired, and we retired and we moved to Florida. And when we moved to Florida, I had a lot of extra time on my hand, and that's when I just started really applying myself. And I was a food blogger, and I was doing pretty well with it. I had joined Google Plus, and I had found my people. They were just like made for me. I just fell into it, and Google Plus rewarded me because I was using the platform like they intended. And you mentioned Rachel Ray and Martha Stewart and Anthony Bourdain and Gordon Ramsay, and they put me on a follow list with all those chefs, Emeril Lagasse, and here was Chef Dennis with all these other famous chefs. And I was like, I don't know how this happened. So I had over 1 million followers on Google Plus at the time because of that, because I was using their platform like they intended. So that elevated me as a food blogger. And I was called the accidental travel blogger because a friend of mine said, Dennis, there's hotels looking for bloggers that want to come out. I says, I'm not a travel blogger. And she says, no, go ahead, apply. Yeah, it's fine. So I applied and didn't hear. Then finally I got an email and they said, oh, sure, we'd love to have you come. And I would think I was the last one they took. So I got not the best room. It was on the third floor, which turned out to be a good thing because they had just put in 9-foot sliding glass doors that opened to the ocean. And I'm standing there on the third floor looking out at the ocean. My wife is there, and I go, I can do this. I can write about travel, and they will send me places. It was that build it and they'll come. Now this was write about it and they'll send you, kind of a thing. So I became a travel blogger, and because of my followers, because of my food blogging and my page views on my blog were a lot higher than most travel bloggers did, I got a lot of really nice travel opportunities out of it and made a lot of really good friends along the way.
Do you get the same satisfaction and adrenaline rush from, a positive response to a blog entry as you would with someone responding to a delicious meal that you prepared?
As opposed to travel to food, you mean?
No, in terms of being a blogger and
I,
you get that positive
oh,
response.
and being a chef or a blogger.
Yeah.
I actually have gotten much better responses as a blogger. As a chef, I get to see them right there as they happen. But as a blogger, people sometimes will take time to write me stories and tell me how much they appreciated what I did. I mean, I've got some that I have saved over the years. One was from a young woman, and I'm trying to remember where she was, if she was in Texas or not, but had worked at a soup kitchen, and she took my recipe for bread pudding and made it for a holiday. And she said there was a gentleman came through and he was like in tears because his grandmother used to make that for him all the time and how good it was and how much it made him feel like home. Um, I had another person write me one time from a Scandinavian country and said her grandfather was Sicilian and she had made my tiramisu for him and he cried because it was tasted like home. And these are the things that I get that make it, that really go far and above any response I ever got as a chef, to me anyway. That I touch people's lives, and touching people's life, or showing them. Like I got an email this morning, says they were afraid to cook fish. They found this one recipe of mine. They could not believe how easy it was and how delicious it turned out. And they would be cooking more of my recipes. So, these are the things that I get. It's just like I'm helping people demystify cooking and overcome their fears. I will say it's not rocket science. We're talking about food here. And it's about cooking with ingredients you like to eat and that your family likes to eat and that you have on hand. It's not always about that rigidity of the recipe's chiseled in stone. It should be adaptable to flavors you like.
Do you find that with traffic to your website, askchefdennis.com, that since you're talking about food, travel, the content is evergreen and people are viewing posts from ages back?
Oh, definitely. My most popular post was written in 2009, and that was tiramisu, or 2010 tiramisu, and that has been my number one post since the day I wrote it. A lot of my older posts are from the early days when my pictures were horrible and my writing was not necessarily the best. And in the old days, we used to tell stories, and now all you hear is, "I don't need to know about your grandmother, or about how you traveled this country to learn how to make this. Just give me the recipe." So a lot of it is being rewritten of how Google wants us to write a blog post and how we want to present the recipe. And but yeah, a lot of the older stuff, things that I did in restaurants, I try to share as many of my restaurant recipes that I can remember, or that are easily doable. Recipes shouldn't take more than dinner shouldn't take more than 20 minutes to 40 minutes tops to make. I have things that take a little longer. Every now and then there's something that has to simmer for 3 hours or slow cook. But for the most part, you should be able to get dinner on the table pretty quick. Nobody has time to just stay and perform in the kitchen. And in a restaurant, we wouldn't take that much time for an individual recipe or an original entree, or we would never get through a big night.
I mean, you mentioned great cooking involves passion, but something you mentioned there struck me, in that it sounds like you are adapting your blog posts in order to get the SEO optimization, make sure that Google's going to put you at the top of the search engine. If you're adapting your approach, taking away the you know personal aspects, the heart to your blog posts, is that maybe removing your passion and love for blogging, and it almost becomes mechanical and technical work?
It can very easily happen. I try my best not to let that happen. I have a kind of a strange way of writing a post, but and people are always saying, well, how do you find the posts you want to write about? Do you search the keywords and see what is the best keyword to use and where you can get your most traffic from? I says, no, I cook what I like to eat and what I like to serve others. That has never changed. Unless a specific company has hired me to make something, and in which case I will develop something based on the guidelines that I would eat and I would like to eat, not something that's going to rank for a keyword. So while I have learned to play the game that Google wants, because I think it's important. If my, where's the best place to hide a dead body? On page 2 of Google, right? So if my recipes can't get towards the first page or the second page, no one will ever see them, and no one will ever, they won't get to try these and see how easy it is and how delicious this food can be, without my help. There's a lot of great recipes out there. There's a lot of great bloggers out there, but I take pride in what I do. And again, I make everything I make. So we're talking about passion. When I develop a recipe, it's coming from me. It's coming from just something I really enjoy. Like I made all right. I made tuna casserole for the first time in my life. I had people would say, "You want a tuna casserole?" I'm like, oh, "I don't want hot tuna. No, just please, no, thank you very much, no." And I worked for this tuna fish company. It's really, really good tuna fish, and I presented different options, and one of them was a Mediterranean tuna casserole. And because I was running out of things to make that I thought I would like to eat, so I finally says, "Well, let me try this. If I do this to it and do this to it, I think it would be pretty tasty." So I made it, and it was one of the things when I surprise myself with something I make, it's a good day because I ate it and went, "Oh my God, this is delicious." I don't know why. So in my blog post, I wrote, "I'm going to tell you a secret." I says, "I have never made or never eaten a tuna casserole before, and this one was delicious." So, there is something magical happens. And if something magical doesn't happen, don't expect that post to ever do anything. That's kind of how I feel. If you want me to write about something, just like that dinner I said was my best dinner, they gave me carte blanche to do what I wanted. A company that hires me and allows me to do what I think is best is going to get a really good return for what they hire me to do because I'm going to make it with passion and in a way that I would enjoy eating it. And if I figure if I enjoy eating it and it's tasty and my wife enjoys eating it, then I have a pretty good clue that it's going to go over well because she's a big critic too. I'm telling you. So yeah, the days I see her just moving the food around her plate, and I'll go, "What's the matter?" "Nothing." Because you're not eating anything. You're just moving the food around your plate. "Well, it's not my favorite." I'm like, "Okay, back to the drawing board." Um, but it's about passion. So maybe you're not telling an in-depth story. I always do try to put a little personal tidbit in there. You're never going to get nothing but the recipe. It's never going to be this, that. But what am going to try and do is I'm going to try and give you my professional help in terms of what can make your life easier making this or how to adapt it to a flavor profile that you'd enjoy more.
What tips do you have for people who have an interest in being a travel or cuisine blogger, but are worried there isn't a sufficient amount of money because there's so much competition? What can one do to stand out from all the others?
That that, my friend, is the $1,000,000 question. And it takes a lot of hard work. People will look at me and they'll go, "Oh, geez, I wish I could travel like you. You have such a great life." And I do. But what they don't see is me working while everyone else is out doing something on the trip. They don't see all the work that goes into the post. They don't see me talking to the chef. They don't see me talking to the cruise director, to someone else, or going out and learning about things that I have to write about. There's so much that goes into there is no easy way to make a lot of money. There is no easy way to become a successful blogger. It all comes down to hard work, uh, to being effective on social media. And again, I always say you got to love what you do. My wife laughs when we go out to eat because every time a chef will come sit with me and he'll feed me, and it's the best meal I've ever had in my entire life because I'm bonding with this chef. I'm talking to him. I'm enjoying it. It's a personal experience. And then later on, I can be more objective and critique it and do things. But at that time, I couldn't be happier. So with travel, it's the same thing. While we're on these trips, it's like, oh, my first trip with Viking, when I got there and they said, "We hope you don't mind. We upgraded you to a suite." I'm like, "Oh, don't you have anything in steerage?" It's like, but it's like you get some pluses and some negatives with everything you do, and you have to try and outweigh them with the pluses and be positive and enjoy them and just dig into it. But if you want to be a travel blogger, start locally. That's what I did. Start going to places locally and start writing about them and start learning how to write. Just because you think you can write, you have to learn to write for other people. And that's where it becomes difficult. That doesn't mean to cookie cutter it because you want to keep your voice because people will read you because of your voice. People read me because of my way I write, and some companies will try and correct my grammar and all and do all this. I says, this is how I write. I know it's not perfect, but this is how I write. I would never say it that way, so that trying to make them understand sometimes is difficult. But you find your voice, you find your passion, and you know what? If 100 people read you, that's a good start. Just get friends and family to read you and just keep attacking it. And social media is the animal you have to feed. That's the biggest beast out there that will take up most of your time. And getting the word out about what you do.
How has the pandemic impacted your blogging and
Oh,
content creation?
well, it was good for me in terms of food blogging because everybody stayed home and cooked. And it was good for me because I had been so engrossed in becoming this really big travel blogger that I was spending too much time just on travel and not on food. And food really is the bread and butter of what I do. Um, but when the pandemic hit and we couldn't go out to eat, and I had fallen back on that so many times, I was so tired. I said, let's just go out to eat tonight. Let's just order this tonight. Well, I had to start cooking again. And I was cooking every night, and something miraculous happened. I remembered that I love to cook. So I was having a great time. I was making dishes and creating new things and remaking old things and just having a wonderful time ordering, finding places to order stuff online and getting things delivered and just loving life. Now, on the flip side of that coin, I had the trip of a lifetime lined up that started in Sicily and was going to end up in Nice, France, that was going to take a month. And that got canceled when the pandemic hit. So, uh, and we have not yet to start traveling again, although I'm looking at this fall, hopefully, to start traveling again.
What are your thoughts on the long term implications of the pandemic on the food and hospitality industry?
Well, I think a lot of restaurants that were marginal closed and they will never reopen. Um, there were a lot of people. Yeah, food industry is just really can be a beast. It really can be hard. And to run a restaurant, you have to have 6 to 9 months worth of capital in the bank for those hard times that you never know when they're going to come or if they are going to come. There were too many restaurants that were working week to week. And that's not the kind of business you can do that in and be sustainable. I think we lost a lot of restaurants and it gave hotel chains an opportunity to close bad performers and never reopen them. I think we lost a lot of hotels, restaurants, and other hospitality related services that just couldn't survive, were marginal to begin with, and we'll never be able to come back. I think it's going to be years before we ever get back to the level. And we were at a peak of hospitality in terms of dining out options and flights. And again, I think we got too far. Do we need 12 flights to Orlando on one day from one city? Do we need, to have this many restaurants? Do we need, it's a terms. And again, with restaurants, everyone thinks they're going to make a killing, that it's a way to make their fortune. And it is the hardest job you will ever have, the most thankless job sometimes that you will ever have. And you'll wonder where, where you're going to, how you're going to make payroll. It just really is difficult. So, um, I think hospitality industry, especially, and theater, again, I almost lump them in with hospitality, is how we're entertained. Is It's going to be a long time before we ever recover fully from that.
And what about in the future, the prospect of automation playing a bigger role in food and hospitality?
I think once we start dehumanizing hospitality, it's no longer going to be hospitality. It's going to be mechanical. I think to a degree, some of it is very good. it's a way to downsize some parts of the industry. And not only, we've had a hard time getting people to work in the kitchens as it is, because it is such a hard job and a low paying job. um, it's even harder now to get them. So I think some degree of automation is necessary, but you can never fully replace people, at least not yet. People making food, people adding their their love and their passion and their creativity into food. To automate that is going to be, I don't know how you do that. Some automation is coming to hotels, but again, that's difficult too, because again, we're talking about hospitality, and hospitality isn't with a machine; it's with a person. So I don't know where that's going to lead us. The days of the Star Trek kind of food dispensers, I think, are a long, long way off. Hopefully, and I think as long as we keep on a positive note, the food industry will prevail in the terms that it's doing now. It's just a matter of downsizing it a bit.
Do you think that with the younger generations that are really connected to digital devices more so than people, in a lot of cases, or their friends are mainly people they've met online and not people they've met face to face, do you think that the transition to automation will matter as much to them?
Oh, absolutely. I don't think it will. Uh, we've already pushed the envelope on that. With like places that you order out on, and all the delivery services that they are, and they all serve a time and a place. But for my generation and even millennials, I think they're not as widely used or as accepted as they are in the younger generations, because it's easy, it's online, it's technical, it's something they can just do with their phones or with their smart devices, and it's just more of what they've grown up with. We did not grow up with that, so it's more of a transition for us. But when you grow up with something and it's just normal part of life, it's not a transition, it's a progression. Like I was at a conference, and there were these two 18-year-olds giving a talk on social media. And I'm going, oh my God, I got clothes older than them. And they're up there giving a talk. And then I went, wait a minute. All they've ever known is social media. This is their life. They have not had to transition to it. This is just how they were raised. So I sat down and I listened to them and I learned a lot. But it's again, it's how the progression happens.
Which parts of the world have you yet to travel to but would like to visit, and why?
Uh, I want to go to Antarctica and New Zealand and Tahiti. And it's just,
Wow, that's an interesting mix.
well, it's all in the same area kind of thing. It's in, towards the bottom of the world. Australia, I would go to if I had time, but that is not as much on my list as if I had to pick one, I would go to Tahiti. Two would be New Zealand, and then three would be Antarctica. But I would like to take them in one fell swoop if we ever get the opportunity to make the flight, because that is a long flight down there, or a cruise, or however we would do it. But that is one area of the world I would love to see while I'm still able to function properly.
Actually, you touched on the cruises. Is there any skittishness about getting on a cruise with all the stories you come across, even before the pandemic, of people getting sick on the boat, or people having to be there for weeks and weeks because of a fear that someone has been exposed to a virus that is highly contagious?
I My wife and I took our first cruise together a few years back, and we got off the cruise, and we had been we when we started dating, we started traveling together. Our first trip together was to Paris, and our second trip together was we did Rome, Florence, and Venice. And we learned to travel, and we learned to love to travel. And we finally got around to a cruise, and we got off the cruise, and it was a big ship cruise. I won't say what company, but it was a big ship cruise. And we got off of it and went, I don't think we're cruise people. And she goes, Oh my God, I don't think we are either. And then we had an opportunity, and then Viking called me, and she was a little hesitant, but I said, let's give it a try. There's only 200 people on this ship as opposed to, what was it, 4,000 on the last one we were on. So we tried that, and we just absolutely fell in love with cruising. And so we have done small ship cruising, and for us, that is how we enjoy cruising. With we were on a barge cruise that had 12 people on it. That was amazing. We did a expedition cruise with Uncruise that had, I think there was maybe 60 or 80 people on the ship. That was phenomenal. So small cruising, I don't worry about. Those floating cities scare the heck out of me. And I honestly, I don't want to go on them, and it's not just because there's so many people, but it's just like, what do you do when you go on these big ships? All right, we live in Florida. We don't need an excuse to sit out in the sun and drink. We live in Florida. Okay. If you're living in Wisconsin, then God bless you. I understand. You're going to go on one of these cruise ships, and you're just going to lay about in the sun and drink all day and eat. Okay. But it's not part of what I need to do. It's not where I'm going to spend my money. When I go on a cruise, I want to go see things. I want to visit places. I want to meet people. I want to meet the locals. I don't want to say, all right, you got 4 hours to be back on the ship, or we're going to leave you, kind of a thing. It's, that's not the way I want to travel. So for me, and for my wife, and for many people I know, small cruising is just a great way to get to see parts of the world. Where big cruises, I don't think I would cross the ocean. I really don't know, if I would cross the ocean in a large cruise ship. Not because I didn't trust it, just because I don't know how I would feel about it. It would be more about my feeling than not trusting the ship.
And what is one thing you would like to share with listeners of Great A Nation that we haven't covered already?
Oh, we have covered so much. It has been a wonderful conversation.
Thank
Um,
you so much.
oh, I have enjoyed it. You asked some great questions. Uh, no, just don't wait too long to travel. Don't put off something you wish you could do now until you think you'll have time or money, because trust me, you may never get there. Or it's a just a crazy way of living. As when we have time, we don't have money. When we have money, we don't have time. So try and make it work, and try and find something. It doesn't have to be extravagant, but take some time for yourself. Enjoy life, visit something new, try something new, meet some new people, experience things, and experience new foods. Just take some time and enjoy your life while you can. That's about my biggest suggestion for people.
Well, you heard it from Chef Dennis. Seize the day. Take a chance. Get out of your comfort zone. I can definitely support that sentiment. Well,
Absolutely.
Chef Dennis, thank you so much for being on Great A Nation. If you want to learn more about Chef Dennis, I strongly encourage everyone to check out AskChefDennis.com. We'll see you next time, Great A Nation. Take care. How's it going, Great A Nation? Chris Thomas here. Hope you're having